Welcome to the first in our Manager in the Mirror series, Big Steppers edition. We got Nico Ellis himself here with us from across the pond. How are we doing, Nico?
Feeling good. I'm excited to talk football. There's not nearly they're playing the wrong version over here, so there's not nearly enough NFL talk. And whenever I try to broach the subject with anyone, they're like, "What are you talking about?" So I'm excited to be on and chop some
All right.
football.
Happy to hear. Um, Nico's having some back pain from both his running today and carrying the league through the offseason. Really keeping us all interested because otherwise
Yeah.
I would be pretty checked out right now. But those offers once a week, they really keep me a little bit dialed.
Yep, I know. I think I've basically sent an offer to everyone over the past like 2 or 3 weeks, so keeping everyone locked in.
And I do have some questions about that, but we'll save that for our little Q&A.
Mhm.
First, we're gonna start with a little recap of Nico's year. Um, so Nico at the end of last season finished 2-13 with 300 less points for than Pat, who was second to worst. And then he did some pre-draft maneuvers that are honestly a little bit complicated to go over, but he ended up with the 101, 103, 202, and 210, 301, and 302. With those picks, he took Bijan, Smith and Jigba, Achan, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Jonathan Mingo. Um, he What else did he do?
I
He
think those are the
traded
main
with
things.
me. He got
Yeah.
Treylon Burks and Tank Bigsby for Rashad White and the pick that became Zach Charbonnet.
Yeah.
Um, and then I'm not honestly sure of the order of these, but he made the three-team trade with Dan and Pat, where his side of things, he was sending Achan his own 25 fourth and Jesse's 26 second for Puka, Dan's 24 third, and Tom's 24 second. And he also sent Smith and Jigba, JMO, and my 24 second for Olave and Tom's 25 third. I honestly, this didn't really get a shout during the awards episode, but I was a fan of him sending Likely and his 24 fifth to Jesse for his 25 and 26. Oh, no. Likely his own 24 fifth and 25 second for Jesse's 26 second. However, all in all, still finished 2-13 and last in points for. Um, then we had a little development just this morning as we were doing our show prep. Just a reminder for everybody. That trade was sending Pat Kyle Pitts, Dan's this year second, and his own 25 second for Hawk and Ball Torture. The 203 this year, Dan's 25 third, Rob's 24 third, and Pat's 25 third. Busy man, that's for sure.
Yeah, big steppers were constantly. There's a lot of turnover here in the franchise. People are buying condos. They're not, or they're renting apartments. They're not putting down payments on homes. So everyone's on their toes. Everyone's for
what
sale.
what brought this trade? Who suggested this? What got this rolling?
I think this one, I was telling Danny, pre-call, it's been in the works for a little bit. I saw Pat put him on the block, and then he sent me an offer a couple of weeks ago for trying to trade for Pitts as he thought it made more sense given that he is Kincaid. So he wanted to take a swing on upside with Pitts and would send Hawkinson my way. And I was reluctant at first because Pitts was my first round pick when I joined the league. He was the Messiah, and it just hasn't come to fruition. But I still got love for the guy. He's a fellow Gator, so
That is
I still believe in the talent, which is why I was reluctant for a while. But getting Hawkinson, who, barring any setback in surgery, or even if Kirk leaves and they bring in a serviceable replacement, I think should be the more productive tight end next year. So getting him, and in addition to moving up in the second round, I thought made sense since that trying to get out of the basement, I'm ready to go for it. So, all gas, no brakes. I thought it would make me better next year and in the near future. So I'm still rooting for Pitts. I hope he does well, but I've had back-to-back years where I felt a little burned after taking him at the 102 over a lot of really great guys. So I think the time was right to move off, but I think it was a pretty good deal for both sides.
Dan, what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting trade. I definitely agree with Nico's ultimate conclusion. I think it works well for both guys. I think it worked out pretty even. If I were Nico, I think I would rather have Hawkinson than Pitts right now. Who knows? This could be Pitts' year, new offense. Maybe it finally comes to fruition, but it's still just so unguaranteed with Pitts. I agree. I believe in the talent. I think it will happen eventually, but for a team that, spoiler alert, I think is one of, if not the favorite to win the ring next year. What Hawkinson's giving right now, I think is just more valuable to Nico than what Pitts is.
Oh, you're talking about, I thought you might mean Pat. You think Nico's got it this year?
I think Pat is also one of the top contenders, but my early hot take is Nico might be the favorite to win the ring this year.
I'm flattered. I'm very flattered.
Start off the app. All
We'll
right.
see how these rookies work out, but I'm sure we'll talk about it coming up. But there's gonna be a lot of young talent on Nico's team.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I saw it come through this morning, and I don't know about you guys, but whenever I see the notification, I definitely get more scared than excited. It's like, all right, who got who? Like,
Yep.
but I saw Pat and Nico were the two sides, and I figured it was a very fair exchange. They always have their wits about them. They don't really panic or anything like that.
I think that's the fourth or fifth trade between Pat and I since we've joined. I think he's my most frequent trade partner, so it
I
always
mean, you
feels
guys,
good to do business with a fellow expansion mate.
you're just always the most active. I like
Yeah.
to take my trip to Cancun every off season and then come back eventually. With the quarterback draft this year, we're gonna have to bump that up a little bit, but yeah. But I was sad because Nico's offered me Pitts a couple times, and this is not the most flattering comparison in the world, but outside of MVP almost season Carson Wentz, it's the only person that I've seen live that they just look like beyond the most athletic person on a field or a court or anything. When he was here, it was just unbelievable the shit he would come down with and how open he always was. I mean, Trask ended up being a finalist, but I wanted Pitts for Heisman personally, and yeah, it's just almost impossible for me to believe that it's not going to pan out eventually. But I just, like you guys have said, it was too uncertain. Nico was asking probably a fair amount, but what felt like a lot for what the production had been thus far. And I'm glad someone appreciates him. I hope he pops off. But yeah, Hawk's a good addition too. I think you guys might be downplaying the question marks with Hawkinson a little bit. Vikings are not the most stable team right now. And he is coming off that big knee. So we'll see. But yeah.
It could be grim at the start of 24, but I'm hoping that by mid-year and going down the stretch that he'll be back to where he was. And I mean, prior to the injury too, I mean, there was an argument between he and Laporta as the tight end one in Dynasty. So
sure.
Even though there's the uncertainty about the ACL, I feel like as two medical guys, given the state of modern medicine, I'm not too concerned about an ACL, especially for a tight end whose calling card isn't top end speed. So had that been, I mean, Brees is kind of an anomaly in how well he bounced back year one, but I'm less worried about Hawkinson. But you're right, there's a lot of flux in Minnesota, and I may have some buyer's remorse if Daniels ends up in Atlanta taken at the 8th pick in the actual NFL draft, and their offense gets totally revamped and Pitts goes for like 140 yards in the touchdown week one. I'll shed a tear, but
yeah.
We'll see how it turns out.
I mean, if it's any consolation, you added, as Pat pointed out, another top 13 or 14 pick, whatever that was.
Yeah, 203.
It's enticing stuff. I bet your war room is very busy.
It is, yeah. We got the whole department. They're grinding tape right now. We're getting ready for the draft.
Love it. All right. Well, anything else on the trade, anybody?
Just another little wrinkle I was thinking about when you were talking about buying Pitts. Another wrinkle. Pat also has Dalton Kincaid. So Pitts could still be available. He's got his tight end, or a route to Dalton Kincaid might have just opened up for those interested.
Oh, that would be interesting. I
Hey,
think I'm
the
too.
108 may get fired off for Kincaid. You may see
Whoa.
it.
We'll have to see. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
I think I'm just too in love with Pitts as a player from back in the day that I like can't trust myself that I'm looking at him objectively.
That's fair.
That's fair. No.
All
All right.
right,
Well,
well, I guess
we
it's time to what?
no, I was going to start jumping into our Q&A. We've
Yeah.
got some questions lined up. Shout out to Ryan for most of the legwork on that one. As honestly, shout out to Ryan for almost all of the behind the scenes legwork for this show. A
Let's
little
go.
brief
Come
round of
on.
applause there.
He's
Wonderful.
he's the
Nothing.
he's the conciliary to Danny's Vito Corleone. You're the conciliary. You're kind of working behind the scenes, making a lot of stuff happen, so doesn't go unnoticed.
I appreciate that, guys. I'm just happy to talk about the league I love.
Mhm. All right. Well, so we talked about it a little bit. I shared my thoughts at least, but Nico, you've been bottom league for a while. You talked about the expansion teams, but it's looking brighter and brighter. What can we expect this year from the big steppers?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm in a really good position to contend for a playoff spot. I think that's a very reasonable goal for this year. Although I think the Superflex hopefully will introduce a bit more parity, but I think almost everyone in the league is going to have a puncher's chance at making the playoffs, barring injuries, But I feel great about my running back tandem. I think Bijan and Brees is probably the strongest in the league. I don't know where I'm going to be picking the Superflex draft, but throwing out either a guy like Stroud, Lamar, Burrow as my QB1, paired with, I mean, spoiler alert, probably Caleb Williams as my Superflex, given that I have the 101. I think that's probably the direction I'm going to go. So having that as like my QB1, QB2 feels really great. And then presumably adding either Marv or Neighbors with the 102 to go along with Puka, Garrett Wilson, and Olave. I think other than Danny, I'd take my receivers over anybody. So, and then Hawkinson's a bit of a question mark, but I have Musgrave on the bench who's flashed a couple times. Danny can attest that in the Grade A B's league, I was hounding him about Musgrave before the year, and he held on to him because I think that, I mean, you never know with these tight ends, but I think he's talented, so he could give me something. But yeah, I feel good. I think we're finally in a position to contend. I still have the 110, 203, and 204 to build out some depth, given that, like some other teams, it's really lacking in that department. But yeah, I feel really good going into this year, and I'm excited to actually, because it's on the one hand, rebuilding is a lot of fun, but on the other hand, it's not fun just going on Sunday and like constantly fretting about how the guys whose pick you have are like doing. And I'm like, oh man, is Luke going to win this week? Is he going to go up in points for over Patrick? Like, am I going to? So, it's great to have picks. I'm excited to finally try to win. So yeah.
Finally, all in on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Bet
fun.
on myself.
Are you going to be disappointed if playoffs aren't coming this year, or are you trusting the process?
I'd be disappointed because I think that my team is definitely, I mean, on paper, good enough to make the playoffs next year. If Caleb and if it were to be Marv are able to produce right away, I feel confident about my running backs. I think Bijan being the RB9 is kind of the floor. I think that anyone who watched Falcons football can attest that he was underutilized a lot of the year and he still turned it an RB1 season. Brees coming off an ACL was the RB2, which is pretty unbelievable. And especially if the Jets add an offensive tackle with their 10th pick and Rodgers comes back, I feel good there. So I'd be disappointed, but I think everyone in my starting lineup, other than Hawkinson, will be under 24 years old. So I think the winning window should be open, but you never know with football. But if I miss the playoffs, it'd be a bummer. But I think there's a lot of landing space over the next few years.
For sure. I would agree.
Yeah, definitely. I see a lot of wins in Nico's future. All right. So you talked about a little bit. You hinted at where you might go with 101, 102. But you have a lot of draft capital this year. You added a little bit more today, or at least a little bit higher value draft capital today. So what's the war room looking to do with this draft?
Yeah, I think
Available, finishing the looking for specific spots to fill. What's your draft strategy going in?
yeah, I think you know, especially as you get later in the draft, I'll try to start to fill positionally. I mean, Bijan and Brees are great, but running backs can go down at any moment. So I want to build out that room, especially after I traded away A-Chain in our three team deal. So it's basically Bijan, Brees, and then nothing. So hopefully in like the maybe at the 203, although this running back class looks pretty weak, but maybe if a guy gets a good landing spot or shows out at the combine, he can move up to that spot. But yeah, building out the running back room, adding another receiver. I really love the three guys I have right now who I think are pretty consensus top 10 dynasty receivers. Not on a par with Danny, but I think pretty solid nonetheless. So adding another guy there, potentially at the 110, that could be another spot to add another receiver to fill that or fill that second flex spot in the lineup. But yeah, we're just gonna see. We're gonna take the cards I'm dealt with, especially in the later in the draft. But it does feel pretty good to control the top of the board, and barring any serious changes, it's looking like Caleb and Marv at the top. But as Danny can attest and Tommy can also attest, I've been working the phones about no one's untouchable in the big steppers. That's except Bijan's not even untouchable. I'm a big Bijan guy. He's the picture of my team right now. It's him and McConaughey.
He's Mr. Morale.
He's Mr. Morale, man. Can't have Mr. Morale without can't have the big steppers without Mr. Morale. But yeah, everyone's movable, but as of now, it does feel pretty good to get my pick of the litter at wide receiver and quarterback at the top.
Well, like you said, you do control the board, so I'm sure the lines will be ringing at 101 and 102.
Yep.
Yeah, you see a move down in your future? Or...
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be a move down within this draft, and especially for those two top guys who are both Marvin especially, but also Caleb prior to this kind of prospect fatigue we've entered where it's guys are picking all the quarterbacks apart. But I still think going into 2023, everyone was saying he's a generational quarterback prospect. And I don't think that's demonstrably changed. If his down year was like 36 touchdowns and however many picks he had making plays out of the pocket with a pretty mediocre USC team, I feel great there. And obviously everyone knows about Marvin Harrison Jr. So it would take a pretty penny to move out of either of those spots. But I'm always willing to consider any move. But yeah, it'd probably be to move back in this draft because I think my team. I don't want to punt down the road and just shift that for 25 capital or 26 capital. I think I'm ready to go for it, like I said. So yeah, that's the plan with those picks.
All right. Well, I guess Mr. Morale might be the answer, but I was curious who the face of the franchise is if you had to pick.
I if it's not Bijan, I would say it's Stroud, but he may be off my team in 2 weeks, so I don't want to put all my eggs in that basket. But if he were to make a return to the big steppers, I've really even if I don't know if he's the fantasy answer as the QB3, but in real life he's just so dope. Love rooting for him, so I'd be excited to get him back. But if Joe Shiesty joins the squad or if Lamar joins the team, that's not a bad guy to be the face of the franchise. So probably either Bijan or whoever my QB1 ends up being. But I do love Garrett Wilson too. I do have I just hope Aaron Rodgers stays healthy because he's so good. I really think he's like a top 5 like talent at wide receiver. He's just so filthy. But so if he has a big year, I'd be super stoked. Of all my guys, yeah, he and Bijan are probably my 2 favorites on the team. But I do love Puka too. Sorry, Danny, but I do love Puka, especially because he's a fellow Bron sexual. He's just a huge LeBron guy like me. So I'm all in on that.
I have been seeing that. That brings us. I guess this is going to be a tough one for you. I was just curious with all this young talent, who takes the biggest leap this year?
I think that like I said, I think that what Bijan did this year is kind of the floor. And with Arthur Smith out of town, which was my late Christmas present because I was fiending for that guy to get fired. Oh my God, he drove me so crazy, especially with Pitts too. I don't think
Pitts as well.
I don't think my blood pressure could take 2 Falcons players with Arthur Smith for much longer. But I mean, I think that Bijan, if he gets a bit more volume and especially in the passing game, I think he could emerge as a top 3 running back, which I think is a pretty fair and conservative statement. He could even have a chance to displace CMC at the top, who probably has another year, maybe 2 of kind of dominating as the premier RB1. But I think obviously Garrett Wilson could take a huge leap forward. He was, let me pull it up. He was the wide receiver 26 this year, which I think is he's far more talented than the wide receiver
Could be better,
26. So if the
for sure.
Jets are less anemic on offense, he could leap forward. You know, I was super excited to add Olave. Otherwise, I obviously wouldn't have traded for him. But the Saints situation isn't great, but he just gets such volume, and he had a couple down weeks this year because of injury. So I think he could leap forward. So I think all my guys could step forward, make steps forward. But I think I'm excited that they've all proven that they can produce. Whereas in the past, I've just been taking dart throws on guys who've never done anything in the league. So I think all those guys I named could take steps forward, but I don't know if anyone's going to take a massive leap other than maybe Garrett in terms of production.
Fair enough. Those of you out there may remember I dropped a little hype video for my team. And at the time, Nico said that he was a year away from getting that excited. So I'm just curious if we have any inspiration or a name change, or if we can expect some little hype footage for you.
You know, if I had the editing skills, I may try to cobble it together, but it would look just super janky. But I may still try to make a little hype video. If not, I'll just like do like a screenshot of something and then like Snapchat, like crop their heads and put them all on and then put a song in the background. I think that may be the extent of my editing skills, but
Okay.
there'll be some hype content before the year. I'll get everyone excited. Or I mean, I don't think anyone else is gonna be excited. I'll get myself excited, and then
That's
you
what
guys
it's
can at
all
least look
about.
at it. That's
You
what it's all
gotta do
about.
it for you.
But yeah, I think at this point I've kind of all the fantasy leagues I'm in are all the big steppers. So I think that name is here to stay. But yeah, there may be something coming for 2024. I'm pumped.
Well, we look forward to it. And it seems the year that you and Pat are finally going to emerge. So I'm excited for
Yeah.
a true 10-team league this year.
Yep.
And then just wrapping it up question wise, I was just curious who you are picking at the top and at the bottom this year. Who's going to be on either end of the table, you think?
Oof. Is this terms of like regular season standings or like champ and toilet bowl loot? I actually what do we do?
We'll say last place record and champ.
That's tough. I think I have Jesse's pick, and I thought that was going to turn into like a top 5 pick this year. It was the year of Mir apparently, but I was kind of in Ryan's boat. I was skeptical. I mean, Nico Collins emerging was huge. Stink Thielen turning in a couple good weeks was really big for him, but you know, I don't want to doubt the man, but I think the wheels could fall off that car sooner rather than later. But you know, if Kelsey keeps kicking and he has all these guys who can turn in another year, I don't know. Luke's team, Luke's got a lot of depth and a lot of like really nice players, but he doesn't have any like, or he's lacking some like real standout like wide receiver 1, running back 1 caliber players. But you know, if he has a good super flex expansion draft, I don't know. I mean, and then Zach maybe entering a rebuild. I'll go at the top first. I mean, it's hard to bet against Danny's team. I mean, when you have Jamar, CD, and Jettis, I mean, I think that going into the year, he's taking the Patrick Mahomes where you just want to bet on the Chiefs plus 600 going in every year because it's just going to be plus money at the end. So not to you know, just because he's on the call, but I'll go with Danny at the top, and then at the bottom's tough, but I'll cautiously go Jesse at the bottom, which would be quite a seed change from going from the champ to the bottom. But I think that's less an indictment on him and more so just like praise for our league because there's a lot of really competitive teams and you don't know how it could shake out. I could be at the bottom if some guys get injured. You don't know, but yeah.
We have a history of first to worst in this league.
I was
we do.
Some call it the handsome manager's curse.
Yeah.
All the best looking managers after they win, they just fall off a cliff.
Yeah. That should be good for me. That means I'll stay on top. There we go.
I forgot we actually had a bonus question. For our manager of the year, Adam Pavicic, manager of the year award winner.
I put that on LinkedIn right after I was awarded it. I was super
I hope so.
Yeah.
We were just wondering if there were any managers you'd like to shout out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, I think this year was relatively quiet in terms of trades, so it's kind of tough to give one for that. this is more of a past 16 months, but I think that the way Tommy pivoted from being a win now team to kind of like a quasi rebuild was really smart. I thought that looking back in retrospect to that Kelsey trade, that was getting Olave in the 105 in the 2024 105 for Kelsey is just unbelievable value. And then moving off Tyreek and Keenan Allen for Devontae in a first, I thought made sense for him. And he drafted Laporta, he drafted Addison. He ended up with JSN and JMO. So I like what he's done recently. I mean, Ryan, you fleeced me in that Rashad White Burks trade, and then I like the balls you showed trading up for Gibbs, even though at the time that may have looked like a quite a package to send off.
Right,
But I think in
overpay,
retrospect, it looks
yeah.
great getting the potential RB1 in Dynasty. So I'll give both of y'all shout outs. But I think, yeah, there we go. I'll give both of you guys shout outs.
I'll take it. Let's go. All right. Well, anything else from either of you?
I feel like
I
that's
think we
a
covered
good
it.
stopping place of Nico. You got anything else to say? Any messages for the league? The floor is yours.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited to get out of the basement. I think I'm a pretty active person in chats, but now I can finally back it up with a good team. And you guys already know that you're going to be getting texts at 2 a.m. from me. It's going to be that British Standard Time. You're going to be getting those morning texts of me asking for your players or your picks. So get excited for those. You don't always have to respond. That's okay, but they'll keep coming. I got the hot stove using some verbiage from baseball. It's always cooking. It's always on.
Okay. I was gonna say, are you worried? I feel like as a rebuilding team, there's a lot more, oh, like let me go try and get this future pick, do this.
Yeah.
Are you gonna chill out?
I know I am kind of bummed about that. It's going to be less fun, but maybe but winning's also fun. So if I'm winning, then I'll be having a good time. But if it's just a case of mediocrity and no moves to make, then I may not be as excited, but still stoked for 2024.
Cool. All right. Well, Nico agreed to join the team as the guest host for Dan and I's Manager in the Mirror episodes about ourselves. So you have not seen the last of him. We'll get those out in the days following this episode. And we're going to record them right now, actually. So if we look very similar, it's because we just stopped recording and started again. But
there we go.
Signing off on this Nico episode. It was a pleasure, fellas.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
See y'all soon.